to the top, all stressors, how they alert the body that it's a stressor and it could be danger, is it increases the sympathetic nervous system. It increases sympathetic tone. So all of these stressors, I have them listed out, I think, on some other slides. But toxic exposure, like the patient I was just telling you about. Light cycle disruption, that means not getting enough sleep in the dark. Food intolerance, that we're going to talk about next. Dr. Burdett is going to talk about food intolerance. That stimulates the sympathetic nervous system and can be a chronic stress. Temperature extremes, trauma, glucose dysregulation. So stress causes the glucose dysregulation, and then the dysregulation of the glucose causes stress. Chronic infections, pain, lack of sleep, dietary imbalances, excessive exercise, chronic inflammation, serotonin, and GABA. Whatever it is, it's going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. And this is how this works. If you denervated the heart would have an intrinsic heartbeat of about 100 beats a minute. Okay? Well, the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, slows that heart rate down. So if you have a heartbeat less than 100, you should have some parasympathetic activity. The sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate, telling you that it's something going on, we've got to get moving, we've got to do something. But what happens is that the body is constantly making these small little changes. This is an hour-and-a-half lecture or whatever, but I'm going to say it in about a minute and a half. It's constantly making these small little changes to try and keep you in balance. The body sees any imbalance as a stressor. So whenever your blood sugar is a little bit out of balance, the sympathetic nervous system is going to come and try and correct it. If you sit with your legs crossed for too long and you're decreasing the blood flow to your leg, your body is going to see that as a stressor. The sympathetic nervous system is going to start to make some changes. It's going to start to make your leg hurt, and hopefully you're going to uncross your leg, and then the parasympathetic nervous system is going to say, okay, everything's cool now. We've got blood flow even to all extremities. We're good. Let's slow the heartbeat down. We're okay. All right? You have to make those small, minute changes from second to second to keep your body in balance. If you have a lot of sympathetic overdrive and not much parasympathetic, what is going to happen is you're not going to be able to adjust to those small changes. So I'll show you that in just a minute. So anyway, let's look at that. All right. So the sympathetic is the fight or flight. The parasympathetic is the rest and digest. All right? You want to have the energy to step up to the plate and do what you need to do when you need to do it. Whether you're a parent, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a doctor or whatever, when you need the energy, you want to have the energy. But when you don't need the energy, you want to be able to rest and to digest so you can absorb nutrients, you can rebuild cells, you can rebuild ATP and energy stores and all those things. So you need both of those systems to work appropriately. When you have too much of one and not enough of the other, it causes a problem. Oh. All right. Oh, I thought I had let me see. Did I skip it? I thought I had a slide in there. How many people have an HRV? All right. How many people like your HRV? All right, so I thought I had a slide in here about fetal heart tracings. But everybody went through an OB little month or whatever. And you know we had fetal heart tracings, and I looked at fetal heart tracings till I was, blind almost, because you look at those, because those could determine life or death. Okay, Dr. Baylor, we made a lot of decisions based on that fetal heart tracing. And we wanted there to be good variability in that fetal heart tracing. And that means that that baby's sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system were making second-to-second changes to make sure that baby was doing well, was growing, was getting enough oxygen, was doing all those things. Okay? If, during labor or for some other reason, the contractions were too hard, there wasn't enough blood flow, there wasn't enough oxygen, wasn't enough fluid, what would happen is that the sympathetic nervous system would take over, heart rate would increase, there would be no variability. And what you would have to do, we would run, they'd call us, Dr. Pickler, right, call us, the variability's gone. Okay, what we tell, hey, turn the patient, turn off the pit, increase the oxygen. We would try and change the environment and change the physiologic environment of the baby to remove the stress. And if we hit on the right thing, whether it was the contractions was too hard or whatever, Dr. Pickler, what would happen to the fetal heart tracing immediately if you remove the stress? It would go back to normal. The variability would come back and all that stuff. So it was a great marker to look at the physiologic stress on the baby, remove the stress, and all of a sudden, parasympathetic nervous system would kick back in, and all is well, and we could go back to sleep, and hopefully they wouldn't call us again. Okay? Well, that system does not go away once you come out of utero. That system still works. Okay? So we can look if there's any physiologic, and you can even look if there's any emotional stress. Now, luckily with the baby, baby didn't have to worry. You weren't saying, well, oh man, I wonder if that increase in sympathetic tone is because that baby is worried that his head is going to get squeezed too much during labor. The baby doesn't have anything to worry about. So we knew it was telling us about physiologic stress. But in patients, you can look at physiologic and you can look at emotional stress, and it'll divide it up. I'm not going to get too involved in it. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. But you can tell whether or not there's physiologic stress by doing heart rate variability, and that gives you an idea of, hey, how bad off is this person? How much do I have to try and find the stressor and take away the stressor, and then I can go back and do it 2-3 months after the therapy, and then I can say, okay, look, heart rate variability is better. We must have hit on the right solution. Okay? Now, this is a little bit different than a fetal heart tracing because it goes up like this. What this does, it measures the distance between heartbeats. If the sympathetic nervous system is involved, the heartbeats are going to be close together. If the parasympathetic nervous system is involved, it's going to spread out the distance between the heartbeats. So we measure those, turn them 90 degrees, and then you get things that look like this. Okay? And how the test runs is you lay the patient down in a dark room, and hopefully they'll be able to rest and digest. So what you do is you see a lot of those long lines spiking up. That's good variability. That's like the fetal heart tracing doing this. Those long and short lines, that's variability. Parasympathetic, sympathetic. Making minute changes, and then the body coming back to the rest and digest. But we also want to see how well do you respond to a stress. And the stress is turning on the light and getting the patient to stand up. That's a small stress, but there's a lot of things that have to go on for you to stand up. You have to, and for the light, for your eyes to adjust to the light. You have to start balancing yourself. Your blood pressure has to go up a little bit because now the blood going to your head is working against gravity. You got to start balancing yourself, so your cerebellum has to start working again. There's a lot of minute changes that have to go on. That's why you start to see those short lines. Okay? The quicker somebody responds to the stress, adjust to the stress, and go back to the resting position, the better that patient is, the better tone their autonomic nervous system is. This is a 21-year-old, doesn't have any kids. She worked at our office. We have a low-stress office most of the time. And this is when she first started working with us. No telling what it was. We didn't do another one but this is when she first started working with us. And so you see a lot of parasympathetic activity when she's lying down, got up, bang, sympathetic nervous system kicked right in, made all the adjustments, boom, she went right back to the resting position. If you look at these graphs down here, I don't know if you can see it, but where I have the parasympathetic nervous system, PSNS, those big humps means that's how powerful her parasympathetic nervous system is when she's lying down. Over to the left of that, that first section there is adrenaline. So that's epinephrine and norepinephrine. And to the far left, that's cortisol. All right? And you see when she stands up, there's a little bit less parasympathetic activity because you can't rest and digest completely when you're standing up. But there still should be some parasympathetic tone. Hopefully, I've eaten that breakfast. Hopefully, even though I'm standing up, my gut is still digesting a little bit. It'd probably do better if I didn't eat right before. But you do want some parasympathetic activity. And then what you want is for adrenaline to be running right now. I don't want a lot of cortisol while I'm up here speaking. Okay? Now, when I first started speaking, it may have been a lot of cortisol because I was really stressed. I should have done this enough now where I can have some little epinephrine and norepinephrine, and then once I finish, I'm calm again. So that's how that works. Okay? Now, this is one of my does this look different from that slide. Okay, so this is good parasympathetic and sympathetic activity. This is bad. This is, like Clint said, this is my average doctor, and you're right. Okay, where this is a cortisol type pattern, because cortisol doesn't make quick changes. Cortisol turns on in the morning, and it takes all day for it to go away. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are neurotransmitters. Boom. Take it back into the vesicle. That dip right there is adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. This no dip is cortisol, and you see there's no big humps in the parasympathetic area. There's no big humps in the sympathetic area. All of the big humps are in the cortisol area. Okay, so this is a very good screening test to see what's going on with the patient. This patient, you pat them on the head, say you're fine, keep doing what you're doing. This patient, you're going to need a lot of investigation to see what's going on. This patient is going to be a project. Okay? Yeah, that patient's going to be a project. Okay. But projects are good. Okay? I tell you, I love patients who've been to a bunch of other docs, and then they come to me. Because one thing, it lets me know that they don't have some major disease, because every other doc was doing disease testing. So I know they don't have any disease. Now I know they have a functional problem. And that is a functional problem in their autonomic nervous system and their stress hormone, cortisol. So, hey, it's right down my alley. Okay? All right. So here's what stress does to the stomach. All right? Now, one, if you don't have any parasympathetic activity, you're not going to do two things. What? You're not going to rest, and you're not going to digest. Okay? So we know with high cortisol, it's going to lower melatonin, so they're not going to rest. And so now we're going to talk about why they don't digest.